If you're really in love with the language and just can't wait to speak it fluently like a native speaker, then as a professor of cross-cultural management for 32 years, having spent most of my life studying and using over 32 languages, and having done a ton of research on foreign language acquisition and cultural adaptation, I strongly believe it will be extremely beneficial for you to understand the concept of linguistic and cultural identity. The motivation for me to do this video comes from what I found out after doing a quantitative study involving 86 Chinese students studying at Kyushu Sangyo University in 2011. I was seeking to find the most important psychological and attitudinal traits that predicted how well the students imitated Japanese native speakers in terms of accent, prosody, speech habits, and even body language. And you know what? By far, self-identity was the most important factor. But I promise in this video, I will not scare you away by reciting all the research I and others had done on this topic. Instead, I will try to keep it sweet and simple. And make sure you stick around to the end, because I have some practical tips for you to help you sound like a native speaker in your favorite languages. Now let's dive right in. We have a kaleidoscope of identities, including social, national, racial, ethnic, gender, and religious identities, even if you're not religious. And these identities may fade into the background or come to the forefront, depending on the social interaction at the moment. So think about how we may speak or act, assuming the following identities. First, we tend to have at least one national identity, no matter weak or strong, that influences how we behave in certain contexts, such as expressing pride when our team wins at the Olympic Games. Next, we may have a professional identity, and in a professional setting, our speech and behavior may be more formal and focused on the task and responsibilities at hand. What about when we are among our friends and peers? We may have different identities, we assume, depending on the group of friends we are with, right? And with the rise of the internet, we sometimes spend a lot of time in front of the screen. And while doing so, we form a new type of identity. And that is our online identity. Next, of course, we cannot forget that our gender identities can have a huge influence on our behavior in certain contexts. Social expectations related to gender may shape how we express our emotions, communicate, or engage in various activities. For example, it's said that strong men don't cry, but actually I tear up at sad movies. And I really love this quote about how identities are formed. It's like everyone tells a story in their own head, always, all the time. That story makes you who you are. We build ourselves out of that story. Some people have more identities than others, depending on their upbringing and life situation. One of my favorite examples when thinking about that is Sammy Davis Jr., a famous black, Jewish, American, Puerto Rican, straight male, singer, dancer, actor, comedian, and civil rights activist.
I'm colored, Jewish, and Puerto Rican. When I move into a neighborhood, I wipe it out.
So what we're talking about here is sometimes called code switching, which is adapting your speech and behavior to the social context.
We all code switch, but some examples are more effective than others.
Okay, let's be real honest. Obama would not be president if he didn't know how to effectively code switch.
He's really adept at reading his audience.
Wagwan, Jamaica!
And then putting forth an American English that they can relate to.
Code switching is a social strategy that allows us to alternate among our various speaking styles. It doesn't necessarily have to involve a foreign language, behavior, and even our appearance at times in order to better fit with the dominant culture or social group. Meanwhile, linguistic and cultural identity can be understood in simple terms as how you identify with or feel as part of a community speaking a particular language or dialect. That could be your mother tongue or an additional language you have learned. In other words, you talk and act like other members of the community, and it feels natural to do so. And when we learn a new language, we construct a new linguistic and cultural identity. Language learning is not simply about learning new vocabulary and grammar rules. It can involve a deeper connection with the culture and the people who speak that language. We can become part of that community. Of course, you can choose not to do so, but it will show in your accent and communication habits, and as a consequence, you will be clearly seen as an outsider. It is possible to develop multiple linguistic and cultural identities throughout our lifetime. I'm an American. Yo soy cubano. Yo soy colombiano, bogotano. Eu sou brasileiro, carioca de coração. Je suis cis. Ich bin Deutscher, aus Bayern. Ja sam Jugoslaven, i neću da se stidim. Sono Italiano. Ja ruski, z vremen Sovjetskog Sojuza. Ja sam Polakiem z Poznania. Ik ben Nederlands. Ja norsk, chan ben kontai. Jinji leo, chat gon, chan ben kontai si. 日本人です。実は私は日本国籍です。我是毛主席的好孩子. 저는 한국 사람입니다. Saya orang Indonesia. Dan saya juga rakyat Malaysia. Tôi là người Việt Nam. Tôi nói được cả giọng miền Bắc và giọng miền Nam. Nói hai Hồng Kông nghĩa Ime Elinas. Ekes en Afrikaner. Magyar vagyok. Jag är svensk. Som Slovak. Sem Czech. Slovenicem. A jsem Bulgarin. Ja Ukrajinec. Ja Belarus. Mo Nepali hu. Vistarma mo agilo juni mo Nepaliti. Me Hindustani hu. Nga Peruin. Nga Tamangimba. Okay, for sure you get the point. But you know what? Even monolinguals can have multiple linguistic and cultural identities. Let me explain by using a hypothetical example. Let's say a 14-year-old boy with a very thick Boston accent, which sounds like this.
Can I park my car in Harvard Yard?
I'm not aware of any appointments about haven't yet.
Moves to Austin, Texas, where they speak like this.
Now let's see, this morning I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I went to the coffee shop and got me some biscuits.
Now the boy faces three choices. One, he can continue to speak with his thick Boston accent, but people might not understand him well, like Siri. He may feel like an outsider and his friends might make fun of him. Two, he can try to find a neutral accent. It's hard to define exactly what that is, but perhaps what you hear on a national TV news station. Or three, he can choose to imitate a local Texan accent and fit in better. So if he chooses 2 or 3, he has clearly created a new linguistic and cultural identity. Yes, cultural too, because it concerns behavior when interacting with others. And there are clearly differences between Boston and Austin. And when he talks with his friends in Boston, he's going to switch identities. Shakespeare wrote,
"All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players."
Yes, we are always acting. We are always imitating an accent and communication habits. They may be the ones we were raised with, but the accent is still an accent and we are imitating it. When people say someone speaks without an accent, they mean a foreign accent. So here are 2 questions you can ask yourself. Is your first accent any more legitimate or real than an accent you pick up later in life in a foreign language or even your mother tongue? Do you think you're stuck with for life the accent and speech habits you were raised with, that you cannot create new ones? Your answer to these questions indicate your degree of language ego permeability, which I already discussed in this video, and how much flexibility you have with your linguistic and cultural identity or identities. Sarah Jones is a Tony Award-winning monologuist who truly understands what it takes to have flexible linguistic and cultural identities. Sarah demonstrates a comedian-like ability to slip in and out of her characters in her solo performances. She does an amazing job of imitating the accents, prosody, and body language of her characters, representing different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. Working with stereotypical culture, thought, and behavior patterns of these cultures in her monologues. Let's take a look at what she said about flexible identities in her TED Talk.
And so I suppose it's fair to say that I am interested in the invention of self or selves. We're all born into certain circumstances with particular physical traits, unique developmental experiences, geographical and historical contexts. But then what? To what extent do we self-construct? Do we self-invent? How do we self-identify? And how mutable is that identity? Like, what if one could be anyone at any time?
The link to the original video is in the description. It is hilarious to watch the whole video. She learned about the essential aspects of her core identity, allowing her to be flexible with all the rest. So again, I cannot stress enough how important it is to understand and develop linguistic and cultural identities in your target languages if you want to sound like a native speaker. And I promise to share with you some practical tips on how to develop stronger linguistic and cultural identities in your target languages. So here they are. Reflect on your own linguistic and cultural identities and how they interact with your language learning journey. Embrace the idea that you can develop multiple linguistic and cultural identities. Develop empathy towards the culture and speakers of your target languages. Try to understand their perspectives, values, and worldviews. Imagine you're a business professional working in a multinational corporation and your job requires regular collaboration with a team based in Japan. In Japanese business culture, there's a strong emphasis on group harmony, consensus building, and hierarchical structure. Understanding and respecting these cultural nuances is essential for effective collaboration. Without cultural empathy, you might disrupt the harmony of the group by pushing for quick decisions or expressing dissent too assertively in a meeting. This could create tension and hinder effective communication. Next, surround yourself with a group of friends or acquaintances who speak the target language. For example, one of my students shared that he used to go to Chinatown to look for chances to practice his Mandarin. So no matter where you are, if there's a will, there is a way. But not just small talk. Try to engage in more stimulating and interesting conversations. If possible, immerse yourself in an environment where the language is spoken daily. Last year, I helped a student of mine arrange a stay at a ranch in Mexico for 2 months, and her ability in Spanish just skyrocketed. And of course, living among native speakers in such a situation allows you to absorb the language and cultural nuances naturally. Okay, if it's not possible to travel, then try to find language exchange partners online who are native speakers or very good speakers of your target languages. Even now, I still participate in language exchanges on a weekly basis. There are numerous language exchange groups on Facebook where you can find partners. You might want to join some. Next, consume authentic materials such as books, movies, music, and news in your target language. These sources provide valuable insights into native expressions and cultural references. I was delighted to receive a very positive comment from a fellow member of the Polyglot Dreams community who is Brazilian. He had seen me speaking Portuguese on the video in which I speak 10 languages on a track. And he said he was amazed at how good my Portuguese was and my accent. And he asked how I could achieve that. Well, the answer is I read all the novels of Jorge Amado and spent hundreds of hours listening to popular Brazilian music from the 1970s and 1980s. This led to forming a very strong affinity to Brazilians and their culture. Those efforts have helped me greatly improve my Portuguese. I've only been in Brazil 3 months my whole life. Last but not least, patience and practice. Keep in mind that consistent practice is essential, except that you may make mistakes along the way. Be patient with yourself and persevere in your language and culture exploration. I hope what I shared with you today is useful in your language learning journey. That is also the mission of this channel. And I called it Polyglot Dreams because I believe with the right attitude and direction, you can achieve all your language learning dreams. And finally, it warms my heart to read comments in various languages. So if you've watched the video this far, I would really appreciate if you could say hi in your mother tongue or one of the languages you're learning in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you can all continue to be inspired, disciplined, and determined in learning your dream languages. See you next time.
Try the Ling app. Just click on the link in the description to start a free trial today.